New York City has sued 8 companies that make or distribute prescription opioids because of the deadly opioid epidemic that has been fueled by prescription painkillers. Now, Mayor Bill de Blasio said the lawsuit sought $500 million of damages to help fight the crisis, which kills more people in the city annually than homicides and car accidents combined, including more than 1,100 from opioid-induced overdoses in 2016. Big Pharma helped to fuel this epidemic by deceptively peddling these dangerous drugs and hooking millions of Americans in exchange for profit, de Blasio said in a statement. Now, this lawsuit follows over 60 others that have been filed against U.S. makers of prescription painkillers. Now, you may recognize some of the names of the manufacturers that are getting sued. So one of them is Endo International, the makers of the painkiller Percocet. And another is Purdue Pharma, the creators of OxyContin. Now, the lawsuit alleges that manufacturers misrepresented the safety of using painkillers long term, and that distributors supplied too many opioids, which enabled the pills to be sold illegally. In turn, this allegedly has created a substantial burden on the city, the lawsuit states, because it has had to increase treatment services, law enforcement costs, medical examiner costs, and more. Now, this lawsuit is similar to a discussion that's already happened in Canada, where the federal government was urged to prosecute Purdue Pharma over their marketing of OxyContin, but only amounted to a class action settlement of just $20 million, which many consider to be a betrayal of Canadians. So by contrast, this $500 million lawsuit from just New York City alone appears to be a more serious attempt at justice, but it still pales in comparison to the actual cost of the opioid epidemic nationwide, where, according to the White House, 1 year of the opioid epidemic cost the U.S. economy more than $500 billion. Now, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, prescription opioids continue to be involved in more overdose deaths than any other drug, and all the numbers are likely to actually underestimate the true burden, given the large proportion of overdose deaths where the type of drug is not listed on the death certificate. So the CDC's findings show 2 distinct but interconnected trends that are driving America's opioid overdose epidemic: a 16-year increase in deaths from prescription opioid overdoses, and a recent surge in illicit opioid overdoses driven mainly by heroin and illegally made fentanyl. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't predict how successful New York City's lawsuit might be, but I am glad that they are standing up to Big Pharma. And even if the lawsuit is unsuccessful, I think that it will actually discourage these companies from being as reckless as they've been on pushing painkillers, especially when there is an actual harmless painkiller that is available in many states and countries. Of course, I'm talking about cannabis, which is being looked at again and again as a promising substitute for opioid addiction. A 2014 study in the peer-reviewed Journal of the American Medical Association Internal Medicine found that states with legal cannabis had an opioid death rate that was 25% lower than states where pot was illegal. So as states and countries continue to pursue legalized cannabis, I do think that it will help to reduce the destruction that's being caused by the opioid epidemic. Now, getting back to the lawsuit, this is a familiar story, as this month, New York City also filed a lawsuit against Big Oil for contributing to global warming, which also follows the same pattern of massive companies causing extensive damage and costing the taxpayers a ton of money in the process. Now, this is what will continue to happen when these corporations are free to make their profits however way they see fit. So when there are no protections in place to protect people from the destruction of something like global warming or from the opioid epidemic from even happening, then you will continue to see this sort of pattern where these massive corporations will continue to overreach in an attempt to generate more profit. That's just the way the system works. Companies are designed to increase profits. So you have to have protections in place to actually protect people that hopefully won't get in the way of those companies making those profits. So I'm glad that New York City is doing something to at least maybe scare these companies away from continuing to destroy the lives of many families. But ultimately, this comes down to corporate overreach. And we have to continue to be aware that corporations are just here to make money.